All right, click the links. You join the channel. Who are over subscribe, so be sure to join over at Odyssey too, as platforms come and go. You never know when your day on YouTube will be your last. So it's hard to talk about these soy boys over in soy country without just devolving into ad hominems. Because you look at these people and you realize, like, I know why you're writing these stories. I like there's a experiment where you can take a look at people, like take 1,000 people, and you said, okay, who do you think will be on the left and the right, just generally speaking, if you had to divide up this 1,000 people, and people can pretty much accurately put people on the left and the right. Like there's a reason these those arrest booking photos look like some dystopian hellhole image, because you look at the people, it's like, they all have a certain look to them. It's like there's a whole science behind there that it's like you're not going to find that in the Western schools, because they're not allowed to study that area. All right, so these two articles, but it's just the same Soylent Green nonsense. Why are there so many men in Rings of Power, and then the female directing team for season two? Yeah, there's a season two. Shocking. Probably because they put so much money into this. They're at the point where they're willing to throw good money after bad, instead of just taking an honest look at this and go, you know what? $700 million. Let's just take the lesson learned. But they're not going to do that. $700 million buys a lot of panic. And in Amazon's defense, it's really not a lot of money, and it might even be more than that. But it's not. It's not a ton of money to them. That's how big Amazon is. They can experiment with this for several seasons more if they want to. They paid for it. Maybe they're just hoping they'll turn around sometime in the future, or maybe it just doesn't matter to them. They have a different reason to push this propaganda. So they're doubling down with another season, and with more vagina and probably more diversity. By all means, take the male energy books, the vibe of the original stories, the European story, and then replace the European people and the male energy that made the original story so great. You know, the hero's journey, man goes off on a quest, that kind of thing. Then when it fails, as it inevitably does, they can blame the people who like the original book. The I don't know what they call them, the Chads, the neckbeards, the people who enjoyed the original books and films. Those people are to blame, which obviously doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because Rings of Power isn't Lord of the Rings. It is a cultural Marxist abomination. If they stuck to the original vibe, this would have made, it'd be printing money, would have made over $1 billion. You would have had people making memes about it. You know when they like something, when they're making positive memes about it. I mean, how many memes were going around for the original Lord of the Rings? But you'd also be selling, I don't know, graphic novels and T-shirts and jewelry with all the, like, the old Lord of the Rings type of stuff, or like, you know, like fantasy cosplay costumes, little bizarro leather things. You'd be selling a lot of merchandise. You find out, oh hey, yeah, Amazon the Rings of Power. It was such a hit. We got $1 billion. Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, how was the merchandise? Oh, dude, we got a $500 million based on the merchandising alone. Like, oh, that's when people are really into something. It would have been printing money. And the thing is, it would have brought more eyeballs onto Amazon Video, and they could have made other video, like, not like this is. It could have been just a commercial endeavor, which gives them money to make stuff that's more artistic and less commercial. It's like that was the rule of thumb for old companies, was like you had to have money coming in the door from this kind of silly popcorn stuff, and then it gave you money that you could experiment on smaller films that were a little bit more creative. It's like that was just commonly understood. But now they're like, Hollywood used to be escapism. Hollywood, comics, movies, video games, all that stuff was escapism. And the theory is it's like, oh, it's recession proof, because people are always going to, I mean, unless you're literally, even countries are literally at war. It's like there's still a theater, or even to the point of, like, somebody goes from town to town and does a couple of excerpts from Shakespeare. It's like you could literally be at war and people will pay in produce. It's like there's always going to be people who are paying for entertainment. Things are different now. Like, maybe it's its own video. Hollywood isn't recession proof anymore because it's not escapist fiction anymore. And to be fair, I heard that idea from Gary from Nerderotic, and I was listening to his live stream today. So credit. So this could have been a money, just a money printer. But they're not in the business of making money. These are these. I've got to use some euphemisms because, hot words. Planetary social engineers. That kind of sounds like out of the Dune book. What do they call it? Planetologists or something? And I love that first book, and I even love some of the kids prequels. I didn't love them, but they were okay. Honestly, I think I liked them more than the Dune later in the series. The thing is, they're selling a narrative here. The narrative is that people who created these stories need to be replaced for diversity, and they treat that as a positive because it suits their goals. It's not that deep. These planetary people just hate you. They can't allow Lord of the Rings to exist in the cultural consciousness. Yes, the books exist and the Peter Jackson films, like the 5-hour extended edition. I've got some of the DVDs sitting up on the shelf. But kids are too stupid to read these days, and Amazon is hoping that Rings of Cringe replaces the original in the minds of the cattle. Rings of Power will bomb, nobody doubts that. But it doesn't matter to them. They want you to change your mental association of Lord of the Rings to Rings of Power. And the Afro-Hobbits, they want to destroy the past, kill it if you have to. It's cultural Marxism 101. Destroy the icons, the statues, burn the museums, the churches, destroy every accomplishment of the past people so the new won't have to look and see these great things they can destroy but never create. They destroy and replace history with the endless, infinite present. They want you to believe it was always like this. It's standard communist revolutionary tactics. Even North Korea did something similar where they had some stories, like, believe it or not, there's actually a fair amount of trade in North Korea back and forth with China. Like, people were sneaking across the river and bringing, like, people think North Korea is so isolated. It's not as isolated as you think. People are able to bring micro SD cards and MP3 players and video players, and you're not playing things in real time, but you're able to, there's like a lot of information that is actually exchanged. So North Korea came up with a phrase. It's like, we envy no one, or something. That was in the mid 90s after the fall of communism, when they weren't getting petroleum cheap from Russia, and people unfortunately had to start eating each other because they were starving, because like everything was built up on oil, like pitting China and Russia against each other. So they had the like standard communist revolutionary tactics. Then when it fails and people start to starve, they look around and they cry that they were tricked, and how come you guys didn't tell us? Which is fair enough. I mean, sort of true, because the schools don't teach the atrocities of Marxism, because the schools are run by literal Marxists. So everything focuses on the fashionable Hugo Boss period of history. Their entire worldview is shifted through that lens. They get garbage that is Rings of Power, and they accept it because it's their generation's story. Plus, they know that there are sides in this. It's kind of like the kids who are acting out for attention, that kind of vibe. It's what happened with the new Disney Star Wars that came out in 2015. Kids pretended to like it because their parents said it sucked, but the kids didn't rewatch it or buy the merchandise. They made excuses, and they argued about, well, Luke was a bigger Mary Sue than whatever that chick's Ray was. And they got all triggered about that. But the thing is, they didn't actually buy the Disney soy merchandise. They didn't put time in the parks. They didn't get the T-shirt. They didn't buy the DVDs, Blu-rays, or whatever goes along with merchandising. Now, it's like none of that stuff happened. There was no cultural phenomenon with Disney Star Wars. Rings of Power, Wheel of Time, She-Hulk, Batwoman, The Witcher, they're all pieces of the cultural Marxist propaganda. Everything cool that came before had to be destroyed because Marxists can't create anything new to replace it that is better. They can't beat the old stuff. If they had to compare the new soy cancer with the older Chad stuff, they lose, so they have to try to change the memory of the old so people focus on the new instead. Lord of the Rings is about people sacrificing for a nation of their people, about a battle of good versus evil. The modern Marxists don't understand this because they're the evil that the nationalists would be fighting against. The idea of nations and tribalism makes them recoil in horror. Everything good they seek to destroy. They replace the people who created these stories from their stories that they created. They control the platforms to distribute these stories. They buy the rights and replace the Europeans with non-Europeans and say it's diverse now, we fixed it. Except they ruined it. The story was as is. It was created from a certain background mythology. When you destroy that or replace that, the story doesn't make sense. You have a European folklore set in an English village when Tolkien was living over 100 years ago. Like, that was the town he grew up in. Probably didn't even have electricity or, paved roads or anything. It was a tribe of English and European people. You take that story and replace them with non-European people. That ruins a story. It doesn't make any sense. Not all things have to be for all people, but that's a tribal concept. They're planetologists. Their goal is to destroy nations, and they're winning. Look around you. It's okay to have a European male story. Tribalism is a good thing. The patriarchy is a good thing. It is the best structure with which to preserve a nation, which is the point. They don't want to preserve a nation. They have to destroy it, tear down icons, destroy the old stories. Even if they can't remove the original books, they can replace word associations in search engines so you don't find them anymore. There is no solution within the system because they control the system. There are no right-wing equivalent companies. If you tried to start one, the banks just wouldn't do business with you. They treat you like they're treating BitChute now. You're going to put them out of business because they want to. No distributor would touch you. The state government where you want to film would make it difficult for you. Even Elon Musk is leaving San Francisco because the state government and the state media, yes, it is state media, is hostile to business in general and his in specific. Friends, it's clowns all the way down. Think how sacred the European folklore is, and they're replacing it with non-Europeans because they hate you and they're erasing you. Would they do this to an Indian, African, or Asian story? No, because they value those people in those stories. They don't value you. It took 70 years for them to use generational propaganda as brainwashing to get people to accept that through government control of the schools, which they control, and the media. They don't value your history or your mythology. They're degrading and dehumanizing you to make you believe that you have no history, which is insane. You guys like, have you seen Europe, friends? Nothing of value, or have you seen like all the literature that comes out just out of England alone? They say like you have nothing of value, but think of the gaslighting they have to do to prove their point. They're using an English story by Tolkien to say that the English story is only valid if it has non-English people in it who didn't create the story. They literally can't create anything new that sells. They can't tell stories. Think about that for a second. Think how like spiritually disturbing this is. These people cannot create new stories because all they write is propaganda and it doesn't sell. It can't compete with the classics. Even Disney Star Wars was a weird reboot of the original trilogy. At some point, don't you think this is weird? Don't you think there's something more going on here? Listen, am I saying that they're demons in human flesh suits mocking humanity? Yes. Yes, I guess I am. Commies aren't people. Remember that. If they're not people, what are they? Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, join the Odyssey, subscribe star if you wish, or join the channel here. And I will see you guys all next episode.